Hi guys, and welcome back to So Sally O. In today's video we're going to be making this unicorn birthday cake. I'm going to show you step by step in this tutorial exactly how to decorate these cakes with the fondant icing and all of the detail. So first off, these are the things you're going to need. Some ribbon, any colour, some Russian piping tips for our buttercream later on, some yellow cake fondant icing modelling tools, I'll link everything down below, some tappets so that we can make fondant icing lettering, and some gold edible paint. You'll also need some edible glue, some alcohol rejuvenator, some gum tragacanth powder so that we can add this to our fondant icing to make it dry a little bit harder, some edible glitter, some specialist cake decorating wire, and a variety of food colourings. Also some sprinkletti or other sprinkles of your choice, white fondant icing, black fondant icing, some icing sugar, and a metal scraper. So first off then, we're going to be making the most important thing on our unicorn cake. It is, of course, the horn. This looks a lot easier to do than it actually is. It took me a couple of attempts, but just roll out some white fondant icing into, or any colour icing you want really, into a long cone-like shape, into a long snake if you like, and then grab a skewer or kebab stick and simply start winding it round. The first bit is the hardest, so just make sure that the smallest end is stuck on nicely, and then it's much easier once you get going to just wrap the fondant icing around the stick. Make sure the icing is relatively soft so that it's much more easy to manage and wrap around. Keep going till you get to the end. If you want to, add a tiny amount of edible glue just to stick that bottom section together, and then I added on this little peg and left it to dry overnight. Then we're at the next day now, so I'm now going to paint the horn with the gold edible paint. So I'm just adding a bit, this is the powdered version, and then I'm going to add into this the alcohol rejuvenator. You can use any other alcohol as long as it is proper alcohol like vodka or gin and it's clear. This will make sure that it dries properly onto the icing and it's not going to make it soggy and horrible. If you want to do a few layers, that's fine. Build up the colour that way. You can, of course, paint the horn any colour you like, or use that coloured fondant to start with. Just leave the paint to dry overnight and then do another layer the next day. So this is just some white fondant icing that I coloured using the pink food colouring, and I just cut out a larger circle. These are just normal cookie cutters, and then a slightly smaller circle of white fondant icing. And all I'm doing here is changing the shape ever so slightly to make them look a little bit more ovally than circles. Gluing the white onto the pink background and then squeezing one end like a little petal to make it into more of an ear shape. There is a little bit of glue in there to make sure that seals down and sticks nicely. Next, these are just really cheap and simple cocktail sticks you can get from anywhere, and I'm just pushing that into the base. There should be enough fondant icing in there just to squeeze that in nicely. I'm going to add on some of these little stars. They're just white fondant icing stars that I used a specialist cutter. I did do a few different colours, but these ones I just painted with the exact same gold food colouring. Next, we are making the cloud to go on the outside. These are completely optional. You can change it around as you see fit. You can adapt the design to whatever you like. So I'm just cutting out the cloud shape by hand in some white fondant icing. That was a little set there. I'll link that down below. That's got all different shapes of cutters in that are really, really handy for all kinds of birthday cake decorations. So I've just cut out some more stars and hearts. I am just evening the edges of the cloud, and next I'm adding on some edible glue, and I'm just going to push in some of the wire into the base. Be careful not to push it through the front or actually pierce the back, so keep the wire relatively horizontal and press down as it goes in. I'm adding some glue here just to the bottom edges of the cloud, and then I'm just going to sprinkle over some of the edible gold glitter just to make those clouds, give them a little bit more depth, but also just make them a bit more special. Also, I'm adding some of the edible glitter onto the hearts as well. Next, onto the unicorn's eyes. So I'm just using some black fondant icing, not very much, but I would suggest starting with one ball and then split it equally in half so that you know no matter what shape you end up with, both of those eyes are going to be the same size and thickness. So one end really just needs to be a little bit thicker than the other. Think of a little tadpole type shape. think of winged eyeliner, which I can never perfect. So you need to make sure that they are opposite. So you don't want two exactly the same because they need to be mirror images of each other. Add a little bit of gum tragacanth to that while you're doing it, so that when you leave them overnight, they'll dry nice and hard, ready to be added onto the cake the next day. So here you can see the cakes that I've made. I've got 2 tiers for this cake. That is just a standard vanilla sponge. And here's the smaller baseboard that I've just cut by hand, just to give the cake a little bit more support because it is going to be 2 tiers. Here is my turntable that is not keeping still like I want it to. This is just some vanilla buttercream that I'm adding in between the layers and spreading that out using this knife. Before I did this, I did trim off some of the caramelization to make sure that the layers were completely flat. Next, onto one of my favourite parts is the raspberry jam. Can you really beat a nice vanilla sponge with buttercream and raspberry jam? I'm not sure you can, and it's always my default cake flavouring of choice. Next, I'm just sticking on the top layer of that cake. And next I'm adding on way more vanilla buttercream. You can never have enough. I think this is what they call a crumb coat. So I'm just doing a nice thick layer to even it out, to make sure the top layer is nice and level. I'm putting more buttercream all the way around the sides. This layer is going to have fondant icing on top. So I want to make sure everything is really nice and smooth. I'm using the scraper to check that the 2 layers of cake are completely vertical, that they're nice and even, and of course that I haven't got too much buttercream on, but that it is just nice and even around the sides and on the top. Next, just chill in the fridge for about 10-15 minutes before we add on the fondant icing. Little bit messy, you can see the jam coming through the side, but it's really not the end of the world because on that layer there will be pink fondant icing anyway. Here we go, I'm rolling out the pink fondant icing to go over the cake. I think that one was an 8-inch round cake, and I'm using this string to check that the icing I'm rolling out on the tabletop is definitely going to be wide enough to fit over the cake, because there's nothing worse than rolling it out, putting it on top of the cake and then realising that you're a few centimetres short on one side and you have to do a patch-up job. So I'm layering that over. It's not as thick as I would like, but nevertheless, it does the job and it's absolutely sufficient. And then really smoothly, steadily smoothing down the sides. When I first started decorating cakes, I really used to rush this part of the process and I'd get really frustrated if it wasn't smooth enough. But I've realised over the years that the trick is to just do it really slowly from top to bottom and easing it down gently. That way it's not going to tear. Trim off any excess, and now we're going to get ready for the next layer. So this one isn't going to have fondant icing on it, it's just going to have buttercream. So this is 2 cakes and I've stuck in there some supports, just 3. I've measured them before so that they're slightly shorter than the height of the cake and just push those in. And when you're serving the cake, just remember that they're in there and check to remove them before you serve it to any children at the birthday party. Next, I've just made up loads of batches of buttercream and I've coloured them in lilac, pale pink and green. And here I just spread some of the buttercream out onto the sides of the cake. I just wanted it to be a bit of a blended ombre effect. Doesn't need to be too neat. I think it looks pretty effective with these types of unicorny style colours blended like this. And I just used the scraper to make sure it was all blended round nicely. And it was a nice, neat, smooth finish. And once you've got that nice soft buttercream sorted, it's pretty easy to stick on the cloud detail. If you want to add a child's name like I did here on the main one at the front, that's a good idea. And just add on the other clouds, stars, hearts and other detail around the sides. Next, I'm trying to chuck on the sprinkletti. So I've got 2 different types here. One was the official sprinkletti, which I think was called Under the Sea or Fairies or something like that. And another one was just a mix that I got off eBay. So I did put a big tray underneath the cake and the stand so that when I was chucking that on with my hand, which to be honest is the best technique I can pretty much come up with right now, I still collected all of the excess so that it wasn't going to waste. Now, before you stick on the unicorn's eyes, I would recommend just marking out exactly where you want those to be positioned so that you're ready once the glue is applied to the back of the eyes and you're confident on their position. And then you just need to stick in the horn Stick in the ears, couldn't be easier. And now using a variety of different styles of Russian piping tips. Now this is the first time I used them, but I was really impressed with the different effects, and they're really, really fun to use. I just used a different piping tip for each colour. So I've actually got the green, pink, a peach and the lilac here, and I'm just building it up really slowly. It's a random style. It doesn't need to be in any particular order. Just build it up. I would start with the larger tips and the larger icing blobs, if you like, on the top, and then work your way down the mane, just down to one side, so it gives a really nice varied effect of the different colours and the different effects of the nozzles. This is actually really therapeutic. I could have done it all day. And again, because I quite clearly can't get enough of sprinkletti and was going a bit over the top with the unicorn theme, I then sprinkled a few more bits and pieces of the sprinkles on the top of the buttercream mane, just to make it extra special. So I bought this pale pink gorgeous blush baseboard off eBay. I've got my base tier on here with the ombre buttercream and the sprinkles, and I've added the top tier that has been covered in the fondant icing, and they both have the gold ribbon around the bases, which corresponds nicely to the horn, the ears, which I also painted on the inside with the same gold paint, and the gold stars on the base tier. At the back, you can see here I've added the gold stars and the hearts, which were on the wire, just in a fan type shape, just to add a bit of detail in the background and a bit of height to the cake. You can, of course, just do one tier if you want to. You can adapt this in any way you like. It doesn't need to be this big. Obviously, it depends how many people you've got coming to the party, but you can quite easily do the same effect just with one tier. And you can kind of mix up the two styles if you like. If you're not so keen on doing fondant icing, just do one layer with buttercream. You can easily scrape round. It doesn't need to be too perfect. Chuck on some sprinkles, chuck on a horn, eyes and ears, and you're pretty much done. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. I loved making this birthday cake. It's one of my favourite kids' birthday cake decorations that I've ever done. I'll link absolutely everything that I've used in this video down in the description box below so that you can easily access it if you want to buy anything from this video yourself. Let me know in the comments if you've ever made a unicorn birthday cake for children or for anyone before. Let me know if you've got any tips or different ways of doing things. And of course, let me know what cake decorating tutorial video you'd like to see me do next. Thanks again for watching, guys. Please like the video if you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon. Bye!